Greetings, citizens, and thanks for tuning in to Nindie Nation episode 109. I'm Jeff, and if you're new here, welcome to your one-stop weekly shop for everything independently developed for the Nintendo Switch. After taking a week off for a family vacation, I'm back and raring to go, and as you'll soon see, so are the Nindies. Today we're covering all of the new indie games hitting the eShop from April 5th through the 11th, and after that, might I say, we have one of the best lists of eShop deals we've had this year, so you're bound to find just the thing to keep your Joy-Cons synced. Nindie Nation hits YouTube each and every Tuesday alongside an audio podcast feed hosted by our friends at the Nintendo Village. On Thursdays at 10 p.m. Eastern, we get together and check out a couple of the week's new releases and have a great time during what we like to call Nindies at Night. This week we're playing Say No More and Astro Aqua Kitty, so head on over to twitch.tv/Nindie Nation, give us a follow, and we'll see you this Thursday at 10 p.m. sharp. Gonna be giving out some games this week, too. Follow us on Twitter at Nindie Nation for even more indie game shenanigans. And if you want to hang out with a bunch of super cool people, and why wouldn't you, come join us on Discord. The link is in this episode's description. We're halfway through our first Nindie Backlog Club and having a great time with Guacamelee, but there's still plenty of time to join if you're looking for something to play. Now, since we didn't have an episode last week, and I don't want to sit here and slam through an additional 20-plus games, we're going to change up today's neglected Nindies. This week, N is for notable, and instead of touching on every game we missed since the last episode, we're jumping right in and kicking off episode 109 by taking a look at the 7 notable Nindies that released since episode 108. Dungeons & Puzzles is a retro-inspired game about, well, dungeons and puzzles. If you're hoping for a slightly more useful explanation, it's a 16-bit top-down dungeon crawler where the main mechanic is a sliding block puzzle where you are the sliding block. I guess that's called Sokoban. Throw in some enemies, an inventory, and more RPG elements, and you've got the basis for Necalist and Digital Crafter's $10 throwback. Last week's game from Cubic Games is Good Night Nite for $11.99. Another top-down 16-bit entry, this one is much more like a classic Zelda with all kinds of modern twists. There's some stealthy sneaking, a co-op mode, and as it's a more out-of-the-box Nindie trifecta, it also happens to leverage procedurally generated levels, roguelike mechanics, and RPG elements. If you like the more art house, get-you-all introspective type of Nindies, you might remember Toge Productions' visual novel Coffee Talk from early last year. They're back with Flynn's Arcade and this week released What Comes After for $6.99. It's about a girl named Vivi, no, not that Vivi, who finds herself on the train that travels between the world of the living and the afterlife. It's a text-driven adventure that wants to offer a personal journey of learning to love yourself, which is actually a pretty similar explanation to Vivi's part in Final Fantasy IX. I love that little guy. Victory Road published a game last week, developed by Backhow, that I could swear is something we'd see from Ratalaika, and I mean that in a good way. Akalesia is a pretty typical no-frills platformer that has you exploring caves to save a princess and trying to get rich along the way. I like the pixel art, and there's always room for a little weekend platformer, so for $5, Akalesia just might make its way onto my Switch this week. Okay, a few weeks ago, we had a wrestling game that looked like one of those timeless N64 classics, but it didn't pan out. This past week, however, we saw Retromania Wrestling, and from all accounts that I've seen, this is the one you've been waiting for. If you love that retro arcade wrestling that falls anywhere between WrestleMania for the Super Nintendo and the Revenge series for the N64, this new title by Retrosoft Studios seems to be the game for you. It packs a lovely pixel art aesthetic with commentary and a character creator to boot, and it launched this past week with a 20% discount for $25.49. If you're not familiar with the term spaghetti western, it specifically calls back to the western movies of the 60s that were produced in Europe. I say this because that's the theme for Handy Games' El Hijo, A Wild West Tale, which released for $19.99. You play as a 6-year-old boy on a quest to find his mother, and since you are so defenseless, you stealth your way through this western tale in a gorgeous isometric perspective as the narrative plays out. It looks pretty cool to me, and if you like that classic pre-3D game style stealth, you might want to consider El Hijo, A Wild West Tale for yourself. Finally, we've got Narita Boy, the wild 80s-style cinematic Metroidvania that seemed to take the indie world by storm last week, and we checked out during last week's Nindies at Night. Describing Narita Boy is just easiest to say things like, "It's like this and this, but with some of this," because, for the most part, it's entirely its own thing. Narita Boy has a similar directionless flow where you need to proceed in a sequential order, but the steps are usually up to you to figure out. The combat is excellent, and the platforming feels out of Prince of Persia or Another World. The story itself is extremely heavy-handed, but it's very cool and very Tron-inspired, as are the visuals. There's a lot going on here, but if you love the style and you have time and patience to dedicate to it, Narita Boy should deliver for $24.99. Just know that if you have Game Pass, it's available there as well. Yeah, Narita Boy was certainly an interesting one when we checked it out on Nindies at Night last week. I was so hot and cold on it, I can tell it's gonna be great for the right audience, but there's a very specific type of gamer that this one caters to. Have you checked it out? If you've played or are interested in any of this week's notable Nindies, let me know in the comments below. Now that we're all caught up, it's time to check out what's dropping in the week ahead, and there is no shortage of games worthy of your consideration. These are the 26 new release Nindies hitting the eShop from April 5th through the 11th. The lone release for Monday, April 5th comes by way of Ultimate Games and the team at Projects from Basement. Cyber Taxi takes the gross, ultra-violent, and ultra-sexy world of Cyberpunk 2077 and throws it into a Sega CD-era first-person driving game. You take jobs from all kinds of factions around the city, upgrade your car to deal with the law and turf wars, and try to just get out of that place alive. I love the vibe of this game, and even though it looks super janky, that's kinda part of the charm since it's emulating a bygone genre. I'm not saying you should get Cyber Taxi, but for $9.99, I just might be tempted to try it out. As is usually the case for whatever reason, we get a trio of new indies on Tuesday, April 6th, starting with Breath Edge by Hype Train Digital with a discount for $19.99. Featured in their recent new game presentation, Breath Edge is an ambitious first-person survival adventure set in a derelict space station. You'll gather materials, craft and expand your base to survive, solve tons of gravity-defying puzzles, and get into a bit of combat too. Breath Edge was probably my favorite title in Hype Train's presentation from last week, and if you're a fan of games like Deliver Us the Moon or Adrift, this could be right up your alley. Herringbone Games is a new developer on the Switch, but on mobile and itch.io, they've been releasing quirky little puzzle games for years. This week, they port one of those mobile games and bring Stacks on Stacks on Stacks to the eShop for $12.99. Starting with the premise of Jenga, you stack items on top of each other to build the tallest tower possible. From there, the game adds various modes where you can attack another player's towers, gather minerals to craft new items to stack, and even play in a sort of tower defense setup. It's not a bad first impression for the team at Herringbone Games. And lastly, on the 6th, Modus Games and Sketchbook Games have an atmospheric narrative adventure coming your way when they release Lost Words Beyond the Page for $14.99. You play as a young writer named Izzy, who is exploring her imagination while bouncing back and forth between the real world and a watercolor-styled world of her own fiction. Check out the trailer if you like narrative games that have a bit more interaction than usual, because this one looks pretty cool. We've got a solid dozen indies hitting the eShop for this week's Big Thursday drop, and there's a pretty good mix, so get your wish lists ready. Always Sometimes Monsters is a story-driven adventure by Vagabond Dog that tosses out traditional RPG combat in favor of conversation and narrative choices. You play as a down-and-out protagonist who is setting out on a cross-country journey to win back the love of your life before they marry someone else. The game appears to have an impressive amount of story arcs for you to explore, and it received positive reviews when it released on PC last year. If you want to check it out on the Switch, you can chase after your long-lost love with a 20% discount for $7.99. PC developer Frontwing partners this week with
Prototype!
Sorry, it's in all caps, I have to. And bring their anime visual novel
Island!
Sorry, it's also caps, to the Switch for a cool $59.99. As an amnesiac dude who washes ashore an island full of scantily clad anime girls, you do whatever you do in these games and see how the story plays out? Question mark? As the first person on Twitter to follow developer Pixel Bamboo Software, I'm here to tell you all about Sakura in Gameland. It's a side-scrolling platformer that uses a retro visual style, mostly akin to the Sega Master System. There are 3 screenshots available, and it is $9.99. I was sitting here looking at the trailer for Super Faust 2, and immediately thought,
Hey, this looks like Daddish.
can I use the voice effects
on my own voice if I'm making fun of myself? Anyways.
And to my surprise, it is also developed by Thomas K. Young, so I guess he's got his own style going for him, huh? Also an 8-bit platformer, Super Faust 2 is more focused on combat and action than its puzzle platforming brother, and sees you playing as a chicken with a vengeance who also turns into a big-ass chicken mech. Looks pretty fun for $5, and if you need even more convincing, Thomas himself says,
It's pretty good. I like it.
The Quantum Astrophysicists Guild is back this week with another unique take on an established genre when Cozy Grove releases with a discount for $13.49. Think of this as Don't Starve, but with a friendlier art style and much more slice-of-life gameplay as you'd see in titles like Stardew Valley. You play as a spirit scout and will spend your time building a home for yourself and seeking out spirit animals. It looks like yet another solid entry in Quantum's catalog and is developed by Spry Fox. Publisher Gamuzumi releases a, quote,
kinetic visual novel,
whatever that means, with Legends of Talia Arcadia for $2.99. It's got something to do with dragons and takes place in a mythical land where gravity is consistent except around the scantily clad anime girls' chests. It's truly a curious wonder how they bounce so much while also staying within such minimally protective armor. Maybe that's what they mean by kinetic. If you prefer your narrative-driven fantasy with more internet-age humor, don't give up. No, really, don't give up. A Cynical Tale might be the game for you. Following the story of Triss, a game developer on the other side of a mental breakdown, you're off to slay demons that are trying to conquer your city. In addition to a heavy narrative emphasis, there's as much combat as any traditional RPG, but it takes place in a real-time, grid-based system that reminds me a lot of Eichenfeld, though I'm not sure if that's exactly how it plays. The humor is very internet-y, as should be expected being developed by a studio called Taco Pizza Cats, but from everything I can see, Don't Give Up looks like a great time and is being published by New Challenger for a perfectly reasonable price of $8.49. East Asia Soft also published their own little mini games presentation last week, and dear citizens, the first release from that video is none other than Delicious Pretty Girls Mahjong Solitaire for $5.99.
match titles to reveal new outfits for your lovely companions. What could be more rewarding in a game of solitaire than having cute girls dress up for you with each victory? In this updated and slightly naughty version of the tile matching classic,
I'm sorry, I just can't even with this one. It includes features such as 9 girls voiced in Japanese, and says match tiles and beat the clock to clear the round, but I have a feeling that's not the only thing you'll be beating. Why did I write that? Moving on. This week we've got one of those cheap little puzzle games, but this one is definitely speaking my language. Ironically enough, published by No Gravity Games, Graviter is all about manipulating gravity. Go figure. You're presented with a series of planets and other bodies, and you have to change gravitational pull to alter the orbit of whatever is flying around them. The aesthetic is cool, and it's only $7.99. There was a series of games way back on the Wii that I really got into that was a lot like this. You only used one button to manipulate the gravity, and for the life of me, I just cannot remember the name of it. If you know what game I'm talking about, drop it in the comments and I'll send you a code for a free game. Only the first person to get it though. Anyways, this gravity-based game by No Gravity Games is Graviter manipulate the gravity, and you change gravity but not no gravity, and gravity... Is it just me, or did Potion Party kinda come out of nowhere and get a lot of publicity last week? Top Hat Games is publishing it and has really turned up the heat on the eShop recently, and I think that's a good thing. Potion Party is very similar to Overcooked in that it's a
zany multiplayer party game with a gimmick!
But the only real gimmick that I see is that sometimes there's enemies that try to mess with your shop while you're making potions. Otherwise, it's cute and looks pretty fun. There's only 12 stages, but there are multiple unlockable characters with various traits and abilities to level up, so that should help with replay value. If you would like an invitation to the party of potions, Potion Party will set you back $8.49. Now, we've already got the Jackbox games, and with over 7 separate packs, there's well over 30 individual games to pick from. But if you want more, or want to dip your toe into the type of multiplayer games that are fun for everyone, What the Dub might be a good place to start. For $8, you get a game that can be played locally or online with a group of up to 12, and every player uses their phone to play along. You watch any number of over 300 clips of absolutely terrible B-movies, and take turns typing out lines that are dubbed over the clips via a text-to-speech system that sends the answers over the internet to be read out in the game. Jackbox already has a few games like this, and I think it would have been a lot more fun if you could have recorded your own audio, but it's a fun premise, and it comes to us from Wide Right Games, who have already proven with Freedom Finger that they know how to make a hilarious game, and it's hard to deny the fun that's bound to be had by overdubbing awful movie clips. The team at Tiki Pod already had a little cult classic on their hands with the Defender-inspired Aqua Kitty UDX, and this week they're back with a brand new take. Astro Aqua Kitty takes the side-scrolling underwater shooter mechanics and ditches the stage and point-driven approach for a more open-ended adventure that is much more action RPG than it is arcade game. I love what I'm seeing here and already know that the core gameplay is sound, so building out something bigger in scope that lets me grind my way through all kinds of upgrades and RPG systems? Psh, sign me up. Astro Aqua Kitty releases for $14.99, and if all goes according to plan, we'll be checking it out this week during Nindies at Night. Moving beyond the big Thursday drop, we've got 8 more new releases on Friday the 9th, and if your wallet is already hurting, buckle up, because we've got a couple more solid titles ready for your digital dollars. Keeping with the cat theme, Chili Dog Interactive continues their trend of releasing cheap indies that don't inspire, but are decent additions to the eShop nonetheless. Yoko and Yuki Dr. Rat's Revenge for $4.99 is a typical puzzle platformer that takes place one screen at a time and includes the usual obstacles to avoid as well as physics and gravity systems, and is family-friendly, which could make it fun to play on the couch with your kids. With a premise of a world where people live in the sky, travel as sky pirates, and live on the backs of gigantic ancient creatures, you might think I'm talking about Xenoblade Chronicles. But alas, this is just the setup for this week's Artifex Mundi point-and-click adventure called Skyland: Heart of the Mountain. These games are certainly pretty and come complete with plenty of puzzles to complement the story, but otherwise are a dime a dozen, except this one, which is $14.99, so it's not a dime. And this week's Ratalaika title is surprisingly ambitious and comes by way of Crescent Moon, who are responsible for a good chunk of the better Ratalaika releases. Raven's Sword Shadowlands is, for lack of a better explanation, indie Skyrim. I mean, it looks exactly like an Elder Scrolls game with the first-person Lord of the Rings aesthetic, but on an indie budget, so it visually looks closer to maybe Oblivion or Morrowind. Impressive stuff nonetheless, and it releases for $6.99. One of the games that I'm most excited to try this week is Studio Fizbin's Say No More, which comes to us from Thunderful Publishing with a discount for $13.49. It's an absolutely hilarious premise that looks like a PlayStation 1 game where you run around a typical everyday environment as a custom-created character and just say no to people. You can charge your no, apparently, battle bosses at work with no, and just say no. I have absolutely no idea if this game is going to be fun or be enjoyable for more than a few minutes, but I can't wait to see the reviews and have requested a code to see if we can try it this week during Nindies at night. Indies, am I right? Another new title with a quirky premise is Luck Slinger, A Fistful of Fortune by Too Awesome Studio for $7.99. I really like Too Awesome Studio, who has released games like Lost Wing and The Bug Butcher, and this side-scrolling western has a pretty cool shtick. The namesake comes from being able to collect, upgrade, and leverage a level of luck, which lets you do things like dodge enemies and bend bullets to hone them towards your enemies. But it also lends to conversations, and you even have gambling games that are included as well. Another title that I'd suggest waiting for reviews before diving in, but early impressions are mostly positive, and Too Awesome's track record is a great start. And yet another gravity-based game this week. What a weird theme to see 5 times in 1 week. P-Cube publishes Gravity Heroes by Studica Solution for $14.99. Set as a 2D platform shooter, it's hard to tell if this is a single-player adventure or a
Zany multiplayer party game with a gimmick!
Because it seems like it definitely has the latter, but I'm not sure how they approach the former. The gameplay itself looks fun though, and reminds me of games like Metal Storm for the NES, in how you're jumping from the floor to the ceiling, blasting enemies with lasers. The multiplayer part looks fun, but I'm concerned that the single-player mode is just a series of bot-filled multiplayer battles. For that reason, I'm not going to take a blind chance on it, but there is a demo available, so maybe that'll help answer the question. Anyone else remember that brief moment in time, somewhere around maybe 1998 or 99, where it seemed like the only games released were generic mascot-driven 3D platformers? Well, that seems like exactly what we've got with Tori 3D by Diplodocus Games. It's got a little bird named Chip who zooms through PS1-style polygonal levels and is a short, neon-colored romp across 9 levels, and it drops for 99 cents. We've still got a couple more games to touch on, but the last game to debut on Friday, April 9th is the House and Fata Morgana Dreams of the Revenants edition for $39.99. It's a collection of 3 gothic anime visual novels that is developed by Novictacle and published by Limited Run Games. There's almost zero explanation for these games, but it looks like a bunch of anime girls with bedroom eyes dressed up for the Renaissance Festival. Hey! PixArts releases Candy Match Kitties on April 10th for $3.99, and I probably don't need to tell you a single thing about it for you to know that you'd probably be better off getting a root canal. And finally, our 26th game of the week is Dot Cat for $9.99. It's a little 2D platformer, but it is developed by Game National. And I'm not too sure about this one, because the description in its entirety is:
Be you a cute kitten, it is a beautiful 2D pixel art game for all ages. Where you are a cat, you must avoid obstacles and beat enemies looking for the end of each stage.
Besides those last couple, that's one heck of a week, huh? Breath Edge and Always Sometimes Monsters, Cozy Grove and Don't Give Up, Astro Aqua Kitty and Say No More. What's piqued your interest this week? Sound off in the YouTube comments and let's chat it up. While this has been a great week for the Nindies, it's probably not been the best week for your wallet, and things are only getting worse because there is an excellent sale going on over at the eShop right now. Ready those digital dollars, citizens, because every game on today's list is at a new all-time lowest price ever. These are our picks for the 11 best Nindie deals on sale through at least April 11th. Featured in the upcoming fourth part of our Best of 2020 series, yes, I know it's April, Dicey Dungeons is one of my favorite surprises on the Switch. It's dice rolling, card battling goodness boiled down to a simple, streamlined package that is easy to pick up and hard to put down. Currently seeing a discount of 33% off for just $10. If this even remotely looks interesting to you, please go buy it. After all, Dicey Dungeons includes procedurally generated dungeons, roguelike mechanics, and RPG elements! One of my favorite games so far of 2021 is Habroxia 2, and if you even somewhat like side-scrolling space shooters, this is one to get, and there's no need to play the original first either. It's never too hard, it's got a very rewarding progression system, and the loadout options allow for some really cool configurations. Habroxia 2 just released in February and is now 30% off for just $6.99. If you live with or frequently play games on the couch with others, Nidhogg 2 is a game that should absolutely be in your rotation. It's a 2D action fighter of sorts, where your only goal is to make it past your opponent and exit the stage behind them, and it is a stupid amount of fun. With a 65% discount, Nidhogg 2 is just $5.24 and is worth every single penny. If you're new to Nindie Nation, you may not know of my love for Cat Quest, but let's just say I'm a big fan. Cat Quest 2 is on sale this week for only $8.99 and is one of my favorite simple action RPGs that's great to pick up and play with your kids in co-op or keep your hands busy while you're catching up on Netflix. There's about 10 hours of gameplay here, and all of it is fun, and there's even more if you start considering New Game Plus and all of the post-game content. If you tend to enjoy the concept of top-down hacking and slashing, you're bound to find Cat Quest 2 at 40% off a perfect fit. Sticking with great co-op games, Pang Adventures is a bit of an odd one. Ostensibly, it is a spiritual sequel to Super Buster Brothers for the Super Nintendo, a game where one or two players run left to right and shoot at enemies above. Pang Adventures does a great job delivering classic arcadey fun with a fresh coat of paint and is 60% off for just $3.99. One of the most overlooked gems of last year is the pixelated Ninjavania Kunai. It uses that crude 1-bit visual style, is all about classic action exploration, and throws in a really cool grappling hook mechanic that keeps the platforming fast and fun. I think Kunai was overlooked last year because it released for $17 and was a bit too unknown to take a chance on, but with a 60% discount, it's an easy game to recommend at $6.79 for any fan of the Metroidvania genre. How about an oldie but a goodie? We've discussed Monospark ad nauseum, but it's still a great little dungeon crawler with a ton of content and a ton of challenge. This week, the Complete Edition includes some meaty DLC packs and is 80% off for $2.39. At that price, if you don't have it yet, it's an easy way to get your fill of twin-stick action with procedurally generated dungeons, roguelike mechanics, and RPG elements! We've covered Joy Masher's first titles, Odalis and Oniken, in the past, but his latest title, Blazing Chrome, doesn't go on sale nearly as often. Just with his other games being homages to Ninja Gaiden and Castlevania, Blazing Chrome is a modern homage to Contra 3: The Alien Wars for the Super Nintendo. This is an outstanding run-and-gunner with a huge variety of gameplay, multiple characters that play wildly different from one another, and a flexible difficulty to let you tackle the 2-ish hour campaign any way you want. At 60% off, $6.79 should make Blazing Chrome a must-buy for anyone longing for the days of peak run-and-gun action. But if you want to slow things down, it's hard to argue against Mark of the Ninja being one of the best ways to sneak around in the shadows and take out unsuspecting goons. This is very much a traditional stealth game, so make sure you like the slower, methodical gameplay that these games require. But if you do, Mark of the Ninja was one of the best games available for Xbox Live Arcade, and Mark of the Ninja Remastered is among the best indies available on the eShop. And right now, it's 75% off for just $5. Speaking of games remastered, Oddworld New and Tasty is the ground-up remake of the original Oddworld Abe's Odyssey from the PS1 that revitalized the cinematic platformer. With movement that feels like classic Prince of Persia, mind-boggling puzzles, and a hearty dose of burp and fart humor, Oddworld New and Tasty offers about 8 hours of top-notch puzzle platforming with a 67% discount for just $9.99. And last but most definitely not least, Streets of Rage 4 is one of my personal top 3 games of 2020, and even though it released just under a year ago, I'm still playing it regularly. As far as traditional arcade-style brawlers go, I don't think you can get much better. The new characters plus the old characters, and the new risk versus reward combo system all blend with the gorgeous visuals to make a game that never stops being fun. There's a bunch of difficulty options too, so if you've never played a brawler, pick this one up, especially now that it's dropped 35% to round out this week's deals list for $16.19. You know the drill, let me know. That's one of the better lists we've had in 2021, and a good mix too. If you're planning to jump into Oddworld Soulstorm when it releases later this month, why not drop $10 now and give the original's remake a shot? Hit up the YouTube comments and let us know if any of these games are clearing out your eShop wallet. After taking last week off, I was thrilled to see how many great games we'd be covering when I returned. Between last week's notable Nindies, this week's new releases, and all of those deals, I'm sure we've all got something to play. Speaking of which, the Nindie Backlog Club is still going strong, and we're all working our way through Guacamelee. It's been fun revisiting the game and chatting with all of you about it over on Discord, and I can't wait to hear everyone's final thoughts. It seems like most of us are around the halfway point now, and the plan is still to have our community discussions near the end of the week, so stay tuned to the Backlog Club Discord channel for more details soon. New episodes of Nindie Nation post to YouTube each and every Tuesday, but if you'd prefer to listen to the podcast feed, it's hosted by our friends over at the Nintendo Village, so go have a listen and check out all of their excellent Nintendo coverage while you're in the digital neighborhood. Of course, you can find us on Twitter at Nindie Nation, and if you haven't joined us on Discord yet, please do. The link is in this episode's description, and the group over there is ready to welcome you with open arms. Nindies at Night will be back again this Thursday over on twitch.tv/Nindie Nation, and I think we're going to check out Say No More and Astro Aqua Kitty. If there's something else we covered this week that you'd like to see, let me know in the comments and I'll see what we can do. Other than that, we're all done for today. Please remember to like and subscribe to Nindie Nation, as it's the #1 way you can help us grow. And check back next week because we've got a promising new brawler, an interesting Metroidvania, and a game called Dungholes. So we'll see what that's all about. Thank you as always for stopping by and for all of your support. Until next week, citizens, I'm Jeff. This has been Nindie Nation episode 109, and remember, no matter what type of game you're looking for, Nindie Nation will be right here to help you find just the thing to keep your Joy-Cons synced.